Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So wonderful to see you all today. Hare Krishna. And we welcome everyone who's joined us online this morning also. That it's such a blessing and an opulence to have the time to come together, to make the time to come together, to hear and chant, and just stay fully absorbed for the time period that we've allotted with no other distraction. Today, we'll begin a discussion about the process of deity worship. And in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings to Sanatana Goswami, he mentions 64 items of devotional service. And out of those 64, he says that 5 are particularly potent. And if you'll put that verse up on the screen, we can look at it. Bhagavat Shravan. So, in the list of 5, we have sadhu sangha, association with devotees. And we have the hearing of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Then there's the chanting of Hare Krishna, living in the holy Dham, and we have worshipping the deity. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, out of all the items of devotional service, took these 5. And he said that if one has even a little connection with these 5, even if he doesn't have faith in them, that the results will be remarkable. And particularly in our line of devotional service, guided, of course, we're Rupanugas, we're followers of Rupa Goswami, who is Rupa Manjari in the spiritual world. And he came here with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as part of his entourage to teach particularly how to practice devotional service so that one can follow in the footsteps of the residents of Vrindavan. And that one can do that even while one has a conditioned material body. Not exactly that, but just that as one takes to the process of devotional service, it's not that one retains or one's body remains conditioned. As mentioned in the Shastra, Aho batashva pachato garyanya jivagre vartate nama tubhyam te pusta paste juhuvusasa arya brahmanachur nama granantiye te. By Devahuti, that as one who chants Hare Krishna certainly has undergone all the Vedic sacrifices and so forth, and specifically mentioned is eligible to perform the Vedic yagyas, which means that one's prarabdha, that is one's present body, has been transformed. And also, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recognized, Haridas Thakur, who was certainly not born in a Brahmin family, he was born in a Muslim family apparently, and he was honored by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who, as the Namacharya, not only that, he held his transcendental body in his own arms just after he had left his body and placed him in samadhi himself, showing that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was honoring him, that his body was completely transcendental. So those who take to the process of devotional service have their bodies transcendentalized. Iha yasya hare dasye karmana manasa gira nikila apyavastasu jivan mukta su uchate. Even as one lives in this present material body, as one engages all of one's senses in bhajana kriya, in worshiping Krishna through the process of devotional service, shravanam, kirtanam, vishnu smaranam, the body becomes a different type of body. It's transcendentalized. Brahmarpanam brahmahavir brahmagna brahmano hutam brahmaiva tena gantavyam brahmakarma samadhina. Krishna confirms in the Bhagavad Gita that when you engage something that's apparently material in the service of the Lord, it becomes transcendental, it becomes Brahman. It retains its, it comes back to its original nature, which is spiritual. So, in explaining these processes that are particularly potent, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives this verse. You can scroll down so we can recite the verse. Sadhu Sanganam Kirtana Bhagavat Shravana Maturava Sri Mutira Shraddhaya Sevana Sadhu Sanganam Kirtana Bhagavat Shravana Maturabhas Shri Mutira Shraddhaya Sevana. And down to the translation. Together, one should associate with devotees, chant the holy name of the Lord, hear Srimad Bhagavatam, reside at Mathura, and worship the deity with faith and veneration. And then the next verse. These 5 limbs of devotional service are the best of all. Even a slight performance of these 5 awakens love for Krishna. Purport? Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur points out that there are 35 items up to the point of observing special vows in the month of Kartik. To these 35 items, another 4 are added, namely marking tilak on different parts of the body, writing the names of the Lord all over the body, accepting the deity's garland, and accepting Charnamrita. These 4 items are understood to be included by Kaviraj Goswami within Archana, worship of the deity. So we can see that there's more to deity worship, the process of Archana, than just doing Artik or something like that. It's a way of life, and we'll talk a little bit about that today. Although these items are not mentioned here, they should be added to the previous 35 items. Thus the total number becomes 39. To these 39 should be added 5 others. Association with the devotees, chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, reading Srimad Bhagavatam regularly, residing in Mathura, the birthplace of Krishna, and worshipping the deity with great respect and veneration. The 39 items plus these 5 come to a total of 44. If we add the previous 20 items to these 44, the total number becomes 64. The 5 items mentioned above repeat previously mentioned items. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Goswami states, Anghanam Panchakasyasya Purva Vilaktasya Cha Nikila Shraistya Bodhaya Punar Apyatra Shanksanam. The glorification of these 5 items, association with devotees, chanting the holy name and so on, is to make known the complete superiority of these 5 practices of devotional service. The 64 items of devotional service include all the activities of the body, mind, and senses. Thus, the 64 items engage one in devotional service in all respects. Next verse. With love and full faith, one should worship the lotus feet of the deity. Purport. This verse and the following 2 verses are found in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1-90 through 92. So, pardon? Oh, you have that? Oh, okay. Did we get the Sarta Darshana yet? Good. Devotee. Okay, so pointing out that out of the 64 items, deity worship is particularly important. So let's talk a little bit about it. Actually, the process of Archana is a 24-hour absorption in a way of life. The modes of material nature will dictate to us how to act. The senses will demand their own kinds of gratification throughout the days, according to the conditioning we have from our previous association with various objects of the senses. It repeats. And we therefore need a way to regulate ourselves that will connect us to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And rather than actually, someone may say, well, this is a very restrictive way of life. I just want to do whatever I want to do. This is a false notion, because actually we're being forced by the modes of material nature to act in various ways. And because the modes are very strong and impossible to overcome by the tiny jiva, they lead to generally to degradation, especially in the present age. If you lived in the Satya Yuga, that might be a valid argument, because you're only associating with the Paramahamsas. But especially in the age of Kali Yuga, it's only degradation. Urvam gachanti sattvasta, madhyam tishtanti rajata, jaganya gunavrittista, ato gachanti tamasa. Krishna talks about the modes, and are those who are in the mode of, associate with the mode of goodness, they go upward. Those who are in the mode of passion, they stay in the middle level of this universe. And those who associate with ignorance, the abominable mode of ignorance, the word is used there, they go down. Jaganya gunavrittista, this abominable mode of ignorance. And it's mixed into everything nowadays. So the tendency is to become degraded. If you just take your eyes off the road for a little bit, you'll have an accident. It's for sure. So you have to have a way to keep your eyes on the road back to Godhead. So therefore, the acharyas have told us that we have these two tracks we're running on, the Bhagavat Marg and the Panchachik Vidhi. And the Bhagavat Marg means the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's the spontaneous mode of worshiping Krishna that awakens in the heart simply by these activities. However, to be able to do that consistently requires a lot of work. Sometimes people say, well, what happened to just chant Hare Krishna? And so Prabhupada said, just chant Hare Krishna. Okay, go ahead, let's see you just chant Hare Krishna. Go ahead, you do it. You just do it and set the example. Just chant Hare Krishna. And many people, actually, in very dramatic cases, there so many times we've seen, at least in my lifetime, I've seen a few times coming to India with Prabhupada, and somebody will invariably stand up and say, I'm going to go to the jungle and chant like Haridas Thakur. Even though Prabhupada goes through his books very carefully, don't go to the jungle and try to chant like Hare Krishna. It's like, I'm going to do this. And they go off and they last 3 days. Or they get into some wild, weird cult and become deviated and go this way and that. It's a general tendency because the power of the senses and the modes of material nature. Therefore, one must carefully follow the footsteps of the previous acharyas, and they have prescribed certain ways in which to advance. Tat tat karma pravartanat. There are all these various rules and regulations. There are so many that we couldn't actually follow them all and still get anything done in our life. In fact, I collected, when I was a brahmachari, many Sanskrit and Bengali books that have all kinds of mantras and rules and regulations and things like that. I still have them. And one of the books just from the Gaudiya Mat, this is about that thick, and there's a mantra for everything. Mantra for combing your shika, there's a mantra for taking charnamrita, there's a mantra for standing up, for sitting down, for everything you do. This is actually, in one way, very beneficial when you do things deliberately and thinking about, okay, now I'm going to sit down. Like I like to say this mantra before I sit in my seat, because it's part of the puja process of purifying the seat and remembering you're being given a chance by Mother Earth to sit on her surface and so forth. But we can't follow all these things, and therefore the acharyas give us a portion of these regulations from these vidhis to follow that are suited for our particular time, place, and mentality. And they come out in various books called padhatis. So I have a few, especially these ones are, I still have original copy. It's coming apart. Even though it's made out of plastic, it smells like it's being affected by some living entities somewhere. But this book was created in 1975 by Jayatirtha under the request of Prabhupada. Prabhupada said that, actually, there's a sequence here. It comes out in this other padhati called The Perfection of Deity Worship. See, there's little pieces coming off it already. describing what he wanted. Here's Srila Prabhupada on the Archana Paddhati. Letter to Nitai Das, 9th January 1976. My dear Nitai, please accept my blessings. Now, beginning from this year's Mayapur festival, the devotees will begin preparing for Bhakti Shastri examination. Therefore, we will require a guidebook for deity worship, Archana Paddhati, based on Hari Bhakti Vilas. All brahmanas will be responsible to learn this book. I would like to have the manuscript ready as soon as possible, preferably by Gaura Purnima. Pradyumna began this, but I do not know what he has done with his work. An interesting thing Prabhupada mentioned, I don't know what he has done with his work. So many projects we all do, right, in devotional service, and it's hard to keep track of them all at once. And you can see Prabhupada in this mode of spreading the Krishna consciousness movement was building a framework. He wanted a lot of these standards in place, and he'd tell somebody to do something, and then he'd go back to his other work, and then a year later, where is it? Oh, he gave it to such and such, or he didn't do it, or whatever it was. That's interesting. But also, in this, you can see that Prabhupada wanted for ISKCON a paddhati that would be from the Hari Bhakti Vilas. Now, if you try to follow the Hari Bhakti Vilas, you'll be here all day. You will be here all day. Just making an offering will take you a lot longer. So you'll see his instructions as they go forward. Letter to Tushta Krishna Swami, 9th January 1976. My dear Tushta Krishna Maharaj, please accept my blessings. And that's nothing wrong with being here all day. I mean, that's what pujaris do. Pujaris stay all day and they attend the form of the Lord, and it's actually a full absorption. It's a very blissful service. Please accept my blessings. Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhav, Bhakti Vedanta, and Bhakti Sarvabhauma, all our brahmanas and anyone wanting to become a brahmana will have to sit for examination once a year at Mayapur. They will be expected to know Bhagavad Gita, Nectar of Devotion, Nectar of Instruction, Sri Ishopanishad, a book soon to be published on deity worship, as well as the small paperbacks. If they pass the examination, they will be awarded Bhakti Shastri certificate. Sannyasis will be asked to sit for the Bhakti Vaibhav examination, which will include the first 6 cantos of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So again, he refers to this book on deity worship. Then letter to Akshayananda Swami, President Krishna Balaram Mandir, 13th January 1976. Hi Srivas. Hare Krishna. My dear Akshayananda Maharaj, please accept my blessings. What are the Bengali dramas that Nitai is working on? He should work on Archana Paddhati, not divert his attention here and there. He should make Hari Bhakti Vilas into a shortcut, not more than 20 pages. He can consult Nrsinga Balaba Goswami for help on this matter. This should be his first consideration now. So again, Prabhupada urgently requesting in January 1976, twice, and then, it's all in January 1976, on the 9th and the 13th. Then on the 24th January, he writes to Nitai, my dear Nitai, please accept my blessings. I beg to thank you for your letter dated 13th January 1976. Please continue work on the Archana Paddhati. Finish it. We are not sure that Pradyumna will come in time. Room conversation with Tamal Krishna Goswami, 11th April 1977. Tamal Krishna Goswami, the deity worship book will be printed by Jayatirtha Das without BBT funds. This is that book. I forgot the Sanskrit name, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada, Hari Bhakti Vilas. Tamal Krishna Goswami, Hari Bhakti Vilas. So Jayatirtha wants to print it on his own, means he doesn't want to take BBT funds. So the trustees felt that this was very good, since funds were scarce. He does a nice printing. He said that he would take responsibility for printing and distributing it. Because it is a very limited edition, it's not going to be sold to the common people, just to devotees. Srila Prabhupada, no, few copies. Tamal Krishna Goswami, yes. So this is in the introduction, Hare Krishna. This is in the introduction to the Paddhati written by Gaurkeshava Prabhu. And it gives you a little history, just a brief history, but very clear, that Prabhupada wanted Paddhati. Now, in the beginning of ISKCON, devotees sort of did the best they could. And if you'd go to any temple, they have various standards. There wasn't a lot of information going around. And Prabhupada did the best he could to train devotees. There were some early books created, an ISKCON handbook back in 1969. It had quite a few mistakes, like how to perform Achman in your left hand and things like that instead of your right hand. And that's why Prabhupada, he wanted a standardized system of deity worship because it's very important. And he said it should be from the Hari Bhakti Vilas. So this is the first book that came out. And it is condensed. It's not 20 pages, I must say. That's a really tall order to come up with a 20-page book. Anyway, they put everything in it that one would need to know. And they got this book really from the Padati used in the Gaudiya Math that was produced under the direction of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and then condensed it even more into this particular book that tells how to offer an artik, how to offer bhoga, how to stay clean, and so forth. Yeah.
Is this book available to purchase?
Maybe on PDF. Okay. But otherwise, and as I say, this is falling apart. There's little pieces of it all over the book stand.
When I inquired last time, this book was supposed to be released, a new edition of this book was supposed to be released in October last year, but that was delayed. And that book...
Sure it's this book, or are you talking about the Panchratra Pradeep?
Oh, maybe I'm talking about the other book. I don't know which book.
So, yeah. Okay. I'll explain. And that is that then there was another book that came out. This is called the Panchratra Pradeep. And this was an effort to redo this book. Actually, it got longer, not shorter. There's some extra information in these books about mudras and so forth, and other little details of dressing the deities and so forth. And then Gaur-Keshava Prabhu, who's a kind of an expert in performing rituals. He's learned how to do many different things. Anyway, in Europe for some time, he was overseeing all the deity worship. He wrote this book. He had a newsletter for a little while talking about deity worship. And what he tried to do, this book is a little hard to read because you have to jump back and forth. It'll say, you get to this point, and it'll refer back to another point, and you have to go back to it. So he wrote this book, cookbook style, as he says, and that is every chapter starts from the beginning and has everything you need. So there's some repetition in it, but if you're looking at one chapter, all you have to do is go through it. This is no longer available, maybe on PDF. Somebody has photocopied it. This book is no longer available. This is what happens to Padatis. And then inevitably somebody wants to improve it, change it, and things like that. This was again an official ISKCON a Padati, but still not satisfied. So as Ramananda Saka Prabhu mentioned, they're working on another one. And this brings me to a kind of an important point, which is that sometimes devotees feel that there's some absolute standard, that wherever you go, it's going to be exactly the same. And it's just not true, because there's too many moving parts, and various Padatis present in various ways. And then there are things that Prabhupada said about how to perform deity worship. But then he said, standardize it according to the Hari Bhakti Vilas, and the two of those things there may be some conflict. So in this book, the devotees tried to merge the two ideas, the things Prabhupada had previously said, plus what's in the Archana Padati and so forth. So you kind of get a confluence of different ideas and traditions. Does that Does that make anybody feel morose or sad or anything? I hope not, because it's just the way it is. In fact, I was riding with the deity worship minister in Navadvip one day on a rickshaw, and I was badgering him, literally, to answer some questions about procedure. Over and over again, I was asking him, was it this way or is it that way? Because it says two different things in two different places. And he finally turned to me, couldn't take any more, and said, "It doesn't matter." I said, "Okay, so you said it doesn't matter, right? Can I get that on the record?" He said, "It doesn't matter. You do it the way you want." So just as a preamble, there are a lot of different kinds of instructions. So basically, you can learn the procedures and principles, and 90% will be the same, but there are going to be some slight variations. So don't freak out that somebody's doing it wrong or something like that. They may have learned that detail from their spiritual master, or at the temple they were attending. They have a particular procedure, they do it in that way. Coming back to the basics in deity worship, which are the most important, and there's a tendency for people to get into deity worship and then want to go into all these details because they think it's cool to do different mudras and stuff like that. But the main things that Prabhupada emphasized were cleanliness and punctuality. And this cleanliness cannot be overemphasized. When you go to a temple, you can tell by looking in their deity department the quality of the worship by how shiny are the silver Achman cups. For instance, I was just in Chicago when we were doing the Tulsi puja. I was going around Tulsi, and I looked, and the two Achman cups practically blinded me because they were so shiny. And I looked, and I said, "Wow!" And I pointed to the pujari, and I just noticed the pujari, and I said, "Yeah, that's shiny." And he said, "Yeah, I know." So also, I was in the Bhakti Center, and they have a couple new pujaris from Chaupati there that are doing the full-time puja for Sri Sri Radha Murlidhar. Beautiful deities, just stunning. And I just know they use copper, which is the #1 best metal to use in deity worship. And so shiny. I could see it from the back of the temple room, how shiny was the copper. So we may quibble over this detail and that detail, but there's one thing that you can't quibble about, and that is that it's important to keep everything absolutely clean. You say, "Oh, that's good enough." Nope, not good enough. When it comes to deity worship, nothing's good enough when it comes to cleanliness. And there's a story in the Chaitanya Charitamrita about Raghava Pandit, who would go out of his way to bring mangoes for his deity. And he would send his servant further and further away to other villages to get the best mangoes. And one day, after doing so much research, getting these mangoes, he came back with the load of mangoes that Raghava Pandit was going to offer to the deities. And then his servant had his hand on the top of the door. And then he was just kind of holding it as he was talking, and then he touched the mangoes. And Raghava Pandit said, you touch the door, people's foot dust goes up, touches the door. Now you touch that, now you touch the mangoes. He said, throw them away. Throw them away. Throw them over the wall and go get new ones. After he was gone all day getting these mangoes. And so Prabhupada's purport comments from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, this is not some kind of compulsive disorder. Some people have this, compulsive disorder. They can't stop washing their hands or something like that. He said, it's not that. This is a kind of very deep devotion. And those who are advancing in the process of devotional service and are performing deity worship will be very much aware of all the little things that they're doing and being very careful. And this is part of the refinement of the gross and subtle body that takes place when one comes in contact with Krishna through the process of archana. That one becomes aware of one's cleanliness and level of cleanliness. So in personal hygiene, it's extremely important to have a regimen that one keeps one's personal effects clean, the cloth that one wears as clean as possible. I mean, in Kali Yuga, it's very difficult. I see in Laguna Beach, California, Tukaram Prabhu, he requires the pujaris who are coming from home that they have to cover the seat of their car. They come out with clean cloth. If they're getting in their car, they have to put a clean sheet, cotton sheet, on their seat before they drive to the temple and then get out. Someone may say this is fanatical, but think about it. I mean, people jump in that all the time in the car, and you're sitting on the seat. It's probably leather anyway. You know, most of the seats are leather these days, and so forth. So being aware of the fact of keeping oneself clean, especially when coming to touch the deity or to even be in front of the deity, one should wear clean cloth and stay clean. One's personal hygiene is very important. Nails should be, as an example, kept short, not long. When they get long, then when you're touching the deity's paraphernalia, when you're touching water and things like that, the nails will touch the water. If you touch your nails to water that you're using in deity worship, it's contaminated. You can't, test the temperature or something and put your finger in like that, because then once you touch it with your nails, then it's contaminated. You have to start over again, get new water. And so you should, also, your nails should be immaculately clean. Take a quick look. No dirt in your nails. They should be kept short and clean. Pujaris have to have these kinds of standards, regularly for the personal hygiene in their body, because they're coming before the Lord. And this keeps one in the mode of sattva gun, staying clean like this all the time. And one of the reasons mentioned by Jiva Goswami and other acharyas for the Panchatraik Vidhi and Bhagavat Marg to be performed together, in fact, it's a necessity. Even though in the Chaitanya Charitamrita it is said that the holy name doesn't wait for the Panchatraik initiation, but then the Goswami said, but you have to have it, otherwise you can't remain in a pure enough state to go on chanting Hare Krishna. You'll be bogged down by the modes of passion and ignorance if you let yourself go. That's a good term. I mean, it's a bad thing to do, but it's a term, let yourself go. Saying, they let themselves go. Don't let yourself go. This Panchatraik Vidhi means that you always have to keep yourself in top form. Where the living space that you're in, don't just let it go. The way you keep your personal hygiene, don't let it go. So this is one thing, is cleanliness. And there's a lot to this cleanliness. It has to do with your personal hygiene, and also the way you regulate your senses, the kinds of things you eat. One of the reasons we don't eat onions and garlic is because they're odoriferous. And when you eat them, they come out from your pores in your breath. Even if you take odorless garlic, it'll come out. And when you go before the deity, then the deity will be subjected to you breathing all over him, and just walking through Pujari room is objectionable. So the devotee's living for this service to the deity, and if you're doing that, you want to keep yourself in a state so you don't make some kind of offense before the deity. And there are many offenses to be avoided, which are listed, for instance, in the Nectar of Devotion. It's worth going through those and looking at them very carefully. Some of them may seem incomprehensible, and tracing back the origin of, why not to wear green or blue cloth before the deity is difficult. I've tried to do it. I've never found certain things. Some are much more important than others, but the general sense of the fact that there are all these kinds of offenses to be avoided, that is an indication that one's life should rotate around a clear understanding that there's proper conduct and improper conduct when one's before the deity, which by following this conduct, one will be open. Well, Krishna will reveal himself more readily. So cleanliness is cannot be overemphasized. and it assists one in all of the activities of Bhagavat Marg as well. You'll find if you're clean and organized, that has to do with it also. Your living space is in the mode of goodness. There's a place for everything and everything in its place. That goes without saying for the Pujari room. Should be immaculate, attention to detail in all aspects. But then one can concentrate one's mind on chanting Hare Krishna if one lives in that kind of state. The second thing is in temple worship, especially punctuality. That things, you'll notice the Pujari steps back, watches the clock. As soon as the second hand hits the top of the hour, and it's 7 o'clock or whatever time the artik starts, the conch goes then. Not 5 seconds later, not a minute later, not whenever I feel like it, not early, but there's a precise timing for each one of the events that take place in temple worship. And this is very important because if you do this, first of all, it's difficult. You really have to live on Krishna's schedule, not on your own. It's a mood of like I'm serving the king and he has to have his meal now, exactly at this time, not when I feel like it because I didn't feel like moving so fast today. I don't feel like moving so fast today, so he can eat later. That's not archan, that's something else. And that's also not spontaneous devotional service. Don't try to pull that one either. I've heard that before. Artik's an hour late and it's like, yeah, this is spontaneous. It's not spontaneous, it's actually an offense. So you have to go according to this regulation of being extremely clean, and it's also not spontaneous to wear whatever you want, because Krishna will understand we're on a first name basis, and things like that. This is not the mood. We're worshiping actually Radha Krishna in the mood of Lakshmi Narayan. Otherwise, there's no vidhi. There's no rules and regulations in worshiping Radha Krishna. But one should not artificially try to enter that. This is the whole point of the Hari Bhakti Vilas. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed Sanatana Goswami, write all these so that devotees will know how to do all these things properly and follow the regulations, because we start with this sadhana bhakti in the vidhi bhakti, following the rules, and then gradually one will develop a taste and come to the position of a spontaneous devotional service. However, we should note that even in that advanced stage, one may follow the spontaneous mode of worshiping Krishna within one's heart. Externally, one still goes on worshiping the Lord through the vidhi and follows these rules and regulations. So these two things are of paramount importance, of cleanliness and punctuality. So any questions about cleanliness or punctuality? Yes.
Probably when it comes to home worship of deities, we see that punctuality sometimes based on children or something, it takes this way or that way. So is that correct? Not
yes,
correct?
that is correct. In the Shastra, it is said that there are two standards. One is the temple standard and the other is the home standard. And the home standard is flexible because Krishna is living in the home, and if you try to over-regulate your family in your house, then they'll start hating the deity. I mean, that doesn't mean you can do anything you want, but there is a flexible standard according to the home worship in the Shastra. Yeah.
Prabhu, I was just thinking that sometimes, like as Prabhuji was just mentioning, on a weekday we can have one schedule, on a weekend for the home worship it could be a little different time. Is that okay? And,
yeah.
And I was, I'm sorry, I'm just forgetting.
Maharaj, this is slightly outside of the discipline process. My daughter notices that my deities smile and frown from time to time. She's taken pictures of it to show it to me, and it's really scared me. Because when she showed me that, I was like, that's actually happening. it does happen. And when I pass by, if I take a sideway glance, I will see Gauranga Mahaprabhu either smiling or frowning, and I have no idea why he's doing that. But I've noticed that that makes me think about him a lot. I keep checking on the deities. I keep, I place the offering, then I just look up and I say, look, don't frown at me. I'm doing my best here. But the deeper understanding that I want to get from this is, first of all, is it my own illusion? Or is it actually happening? Second thing is, I feel like when the deities came home, we didn't have any proper process of installing them or putting them. They came and they stayed with me. And somebody told me when I was telling them that, I'm not ready for this. I don't have the qualifications to do deity worship. And they said, the deities have come to you. You did not go find them and bring them. So there must be some reason they came to you. And if they've come to you, you do your best and you keep them the best you can. So, is there a deeper attachment that develops with the deity in you over time? Initially they were only deities; they were just sitting there. And now I feel like if someone had asked me earlier to hand them over, I would have thought it's the best thing to do because I'm not regulated enough to keep them. But now, if you ask me to give them, it's like my tulsi. I would rather sell you my house than give you my deities. So, what is that develops between the person and the deity? Even if we're not exactly in the Pancharatric Vidhi, that is something that grows with this interaction. Can you explain that to me? And also this thing of why is he frowning? Should I worry about it? Or, do I just do my best and pray?
Well, Krishna's all attractive. And when he appears in the Archan, he appears in the Archa form, he is actually personally present, and therefore it's natural for us to be attracted. I'm attracted to all the varieties of this world, especially the forms in this world, out of illusion and influenced by the modes of material nature. But the form of the Lord and the deity is actually Krishna himself, and it is the original and natural attraction that the living entity has. So it isn't something artificial, but we want to have the Lord's form in our mind's eye and to see it, and we want that kind of interaction with a person who's Krishna. And so Krishna from within the heart helps to, as we serve the deity and we place the deity in our home, cleanse our heart and increase our attachment, especially through service. Atashri Krishna namani na bhaved grayam indraye seva mukhihi jivado swayam eva spuratyada. If one performs service, especially beginning with the tongue, then Krishna will reveal himself. And one of the ways he reveals himself to the devotees is through the deity, like he did for Madhavendra Puri, who had a dream about Krishna, and Krishna said, I'm in the bushes, and then he went and found the deity and brought him out, and then the deity charmed everybody in the whole village, and for many miles around people came and served the deity, and then he interacted with him in many ways. As far as personal interaction with the deity, this is in the Shastra. The deity can talk, he can have interactions. In general, we should be conservative about, we may experience something and say, I feel something. Generally, when Krishna reveals himself in some ways, these things should be kept secret. You brought this up and it's a good thing. I'm not getting on, saying bad for that. But in general, we should be very conservative about revealing any of these kind of intimate feelings we have. Whether we're sure about whether it was something real or not, we should leave it for rumination within our own mind and heart. In fact, it says in the Brihat Bhagavatamrita that when one has a revelation of Krishna, one shouldn't reveal it even to one's own mind. Because the mind might... Because the false ego can appropriate anything, And also because people who go around revealing their intimate realizations all the time publicly become very annoying to everyone. So I had this dream, I had this thing, and it's like, maybe you did, maybe you didn't, you know, but you don't need to broadcast it all the time. What comes out in those who are actually having these kinds of realization is very steady service. Mother Nidra has done Mangalarti every day for the last 30 years or something like that in Denver, every day. And so she doesn't have to say anything. Are you seeing Krishna? You know, something like that. She's seeing Krishna one way or the other, because otherwise she wouldn't be waking up in the sub-zero weather every day in the winter in Denver and coming and doing the artiks. It comes out in our steadiness, you know, these kinds of things. So, yes, Krishna reciprocates with his devotees through the deity form, and he even dances. And Gauridas Pandit, one of the associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, was so, felt so much separation from Gaur Nitai that he had deities made of them and in his house. And then he became so attached to them, and then Gaur Nitai came and visited his house. And he said, you know, he was looking at the two. He couldn't distinguish. So he said, well, I want you to stay. So then the deity started walking out. He said, no, you stay. And then the other Gaur Nitai started walking out. And there's this charming story in the Chaitanya Bhagavat about him grabbing the feet of the deity. And then Gaur Nitai just came, he grabbed it. No, you stay, you stay, you stay. So these stories are there throughout the Shastra about and Prabhupada mentions in his book, sometimes the deity is so attached to the servant that there's a story about the deity performing the Pindas ceremony for the servitor who had passed on. The deity does the Shraddha ceremony and so forth. So it's very intimate. And yeah, so that can be there. Yes, a couple more, and then I'm going to go on to some substance. Not that this isn't substantial. I mean, I have an outline that I want to cover.
I just had a quick question, Prabhuji, that how important is the pran pratishtha for deities at home? Because the deities come, you start worshipping, then there's this thought come, oh, the formal pran pratishtha has not happened.
There's different ways that deities become installed. One way is that they're worshipped over a long period of time. Even without the pran pratishtha, if one worships a deity steadily with the proper standard, then it's considered to be installed by dint of that steady service over time. On the other hand, one may do an elaborate installation ceremony and then not be serious about worshiping the deity. You know, you can hire somebody to come and do it. There's Brahmins that'll do all kinds of stuff. I've seen some really fancy installation ceremonies with gold wire and, you know, it's like, where does that go? You attach it here, and it's like really complicated. And it does, and afterwards, you know, the spirit might not even be there. So there are different ways in which the deity is considered to be installed. The most important is what comes from the heart of the servitor. Because actually the deity is an external manifestation of what's in the heart of a pure devotee. Bhavadvita bhagavatas tirta bhuta swayam vibho tirta kurvanti tirtani swantakstena gadabrita. So the pure devotee reveals the Dham. Otherwise, if the Goswamis hadn't gone to Vrindavan, who would have known? And you see, they established the primary deities because they were, that was what their relationship was. And you see, Prabhupada came and he established Radha Krishna, Krishna Balaram. Otherwise, nobody would have really seen Krishna Balaram. There's no real Radha Krishna worship going on in America, with to speak of Krishna Balaram worship anywhere, until Prabhupada came revealed, because that's his bhava, that's what in his heart. And when a devotee asked the deity, you know, could you please stay here? Like Prabhupada was in Australia and there were no qualified devotees to worship the deity, and Prabhupada he knew I might not come back here. Australia is a long way away if you've ever flown there. And he prayed to Krishna, I'm leaving you with unqualified people, please don't mind. And then he told the devotees, become qualified really fast, please, and don't make offenses and so forth. But it was Prabhupada's prayer, that's the real establishment of the deity. It's what's in the heart of the devotee that reveals the Dham. And we say this song and these prayers, Nikunjayuno Ratikeli Siddhya. A wonderful realization I heard from Jai Keshava Prabhu a few years ago when we were in Govardhan. He was realizing how this Nikunj, the Krishna is being worshipped in the Kunj, And so with this prayer, he was saying, Prabhupada went over and he started all these little kunjas everywhere. Because every place you go, he's like, here's a little kunj. And Radha and Krishna are being worshipped here. And this is what comes out from the heart of the pure devotee. Srivas Prabhu?
Prabhuji, earlier you were mentioning for the Bhakti Shastri, we should also have, and Prabhupada recommended the deity worship class. Is that something?
Yeah, we could do. I mean, he wanted it, and it's really important. We had established a long time ago here the kitchen standards. Does anybody take that? Was anybody here for that? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it was an interesting situation. We had our little place over there. We had 1 or 2 brahmanas. No one was thinking about initiation, and lots of people wanted to cook. So we started this course to educate devotees simultaneously about the standards for cooking. And by the way, Prabhupada was saying only twice initiated Brahmins can cook, which a lot of times causes, a revolution and bloodshed in any temple where there's a lot of Indians cooking, especially Matajis who've been cooking from the time they were knee-high to their mother. And then, they're like, you're telling me I can't cook for Krishna? I got to be second initiated. It's a big thing in ISKCON. So we started this whole thing, and it was very beneficial. Yeah.
Just to add to the picture you were saying, and with a rolling pin in their hand, I don't think we would.
A rolling pin in their hand. But it went quite well. We'd like to welcome the 90 people who are joined us online this morning. That's an algorithm we use to figure out how many are on.
So yes. Probably we can think about it at this point of having. I just wanted to see more of your thoughts.
Yeah, definitely you can do that. It should at least start with the basics. Cleanliness, punctuality, and a few other things that I'm going to talk about today. We could put it together. And also about, we already have this cooking standard thing which can be used, which is well thought out and put together and so forth. It's important. It gives a sense of, actually is very beneficial for everybody. We study on one side the Shastra, but then in this Panchratrik Vidhi, you actually get to enact what's in the Shastra and approach the personal form of Krishna by cooking for him. And even if you don't have Brahminical initiation and are not going on the altar yet, there's a way in which to conduct oneself within the temple so that it brings one closer to Krishna. So those things are important. So if there was nothing else, I'm going to move on with a few other things. Yeah. So, bring to your attention that in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, part 2, chapter 27, Lord Krishna's instructions on the process of deity worship. I'm not going to read it now because it's rather extensive and it'll take up most of the time. But as homework, actually go home and read this chapter. It's 55 verses. 11:27, and read the whole chapter. And you'll see there that Krishna himself is teaching the process of deity worship to Uddhava. So this is the basis of the vidhi, and this will give you, when you read this chapter, really a nice sense of how important it is that Krishna is personally speaking it, and you'll be empowered, just by hearing this chapter. So, can everyone do that homework? Yes. Okay, so do that. That's really nice. You can read that chapter. And Then I'll just say something briefly about deity worship before taking second initiation. And that is that pre-initiates can worship the deity at home, but without using the Pancharatric mantras. So you find that in the deity worship books that the mantras are important. They're what are called the Bij mantras. And they're used to worship the deity. For instance, when you offer something to the spiritual master, you're saying, Aing Gurave Namaha. So Aing is the seed mantra, the Bij mantra, that goes along with offering to the spiritual master. And then there are others for worshipping the other deities, like Kling is another seed mantra. And these mantras one receives at second initiation. So when we describe the process of initiation, we do so based on the traditional system, and it's enumerated by Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his essay Pancha Samskar, and just briefly it means that in the beginning there's tapa, which means one begins to write the names of the Lord on one's body, and in some of the sampradayas there's a branding of the conch and the lotus and so forth, and then or the chakra. Tapa means one begins to turn away and feel the heat, turn away from the material life. And pundra, which means to apply tilak. Incidentally, anyone who is aspiring for initiation already approach the spiritual master, wear two strands of neck beads. And those, when somebody takes initiation, they wear 3. I see a lot of times, 3 even while somebody's aspiring. So there should be 2, and it's a sign you can see. So anyway, in this pundra, one begins to show the external signs of being a Vaishnav. It means wearing this urdhva pundra, which is significant. There are many statements in Shastra about the importance of the urdhva pundra and how if one simply sees it, one becomes purified. And the act of putting on urdhva pundra and walking around, displaying the external signs of a Vaishnav, is also significant. You'll find that people interact with you differently, and you think about interacting with people differently when you're showing that you're a Vaishnav. Then comes the nama, which means one receives the Harinam initiation, and also takes the name, Das or Dasi, and makes a vow to follow the rules and regulations. The 4 regulative principles. Wait, what are they? 4 regulative principles.
No meat eating, no illicit sex, no chant 16 rounds.
There's 2 more regulative principles.
And no gambling.
No gambling and?
No intoxication.
Very good. So you take these vows and then chant a minimum number of rounds, and then after that, doing that steadily, and Prabhupada also emphasized the importance of taking Bhakti Shastri before what we call second initiation, which is actually the Diksha, receiving the Diksha mantras. And during that initiation, one hears the mantras that are passed down through disciplic succession through one's right ear. Within there's a Lakshana mantra for the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. And from that, the other mantras expand. And these different parts of the mantra which we use in deity worship to approach the deity then become available to us. And then one is qualified to see the deity, to touch the deity. It means see the deity being worshipped and so forth, and also participate in worshipping the deity, touching the deity. This is the Shastric system. Not that anybody willy-nilly can just walk in and do anything. There has to be training and refinement, and the reformatory process of taking this diksha, which means that one's transformed into a Brahman, even if one doesn't come from a Brahmana family. The Shastra says, Yata kanchanatam yati kamsam rasa vidanata tata diksha vidanena dvijatam jayatendranam. That by the authorized process, which I just mentioned, and taking the Diksha mantras from a bona fide Vaishnav guru, then one becomes transformed, just as much as ordinary metal can be transformed into gold by the alchemic process. It's something like, anyway, I can't tell you the formula, because I don't know it. But Prabhupada mentions a few times about how there was some alchemical process. So it says, by following the process that's given in the Shastra, one becomes transformed and then becomes qualified to worship the deity. So this is there throughout the Shastra. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur went to great lengths to bring this standard out, because there are, in every religious system, there's always a class that wants to hold on to all the power and say, only these people born in this family can do this. And similarly, there are those who say you have to be born in a Brahmin family in order to worship the deity, or to give initiation even, and so forth. But this is not borne out in the Shastra. But there's more battles to come. Still there, although Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur soundly established through his debates and writings and so forth, and so did the other acharyas, and Srila Prabhupada brought this point very strongly, although it pretty much fell on deaf ears for Americans, because what do they know? What's the difference anyway? But it's coming up again nowadays, and one should be ready to and understand the Shastric basis of the transformation that takes place through the Pancharatric initiation. In any case, for the practical reasons, one comes to this point of refinement according to the discretion of the spiritual master who gives initiation, second initiation. Then one becomes qualified to study the science of deity worship and go into worship the deity. Before one's initiated and has these mantras and has gone that far, can one worship the deity at home? Yes. But without the Pancharatric mantras, because one hasn't received them through the proper channel yet. So one can simply substitute those with simple statements. My dear Lord Krishna, please accept this offering, and so forth. My dear Lord, please take rest now. Of course, any mantra uttered in whatever language is effectual, mostly because of the feeling behind it. There's a case to be made that when one carefully follows what the Padati says, this is a sign of devotion. In other words, if you're lazy and you don't try to learn the process and you just say, I'll do it whatever way I want, does that actually show devotion? So both things should be there. We should learn the process, and we should offer whatever we do with devotion. In general, the Padati emphasizes before performing any kind of deity worship, one should think, I'm assisting my guru, I'm an instrument in his hands, and should beg the guru's permission to worship the Lord, uttering the guru's pranam mantra as well as the following mantra, which I've given here as a prayer to the spiritual master. Prabhupada emphasized this, that one should always approach as das, 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 anudasa. And in fact, in the preamble to any puja process, one says this mantra, Naham vipro nacha narapatir napi vaisho nashudro naham varni nacha gripatir no vanasto yatirva kintu prodyan nikila paramananda purnamratabdir gopi bartu parakamalayor das, 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 anudasaha. I'm not a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, Sannyasi, Brahmachari, Vanaprastha, Grahastha, but I am the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant of the Lord. One has to do the Buddha Shuddhi. Buddha Shuddhi means purifying the senses and the intelligence of these designations before approaching the Lord. So anyway, deity worship can be performed at home, but in a simplified way before one accepts the second initiation. And as far as general process goes, a couple of main points. And what is the definition and goal of Archana? How is everybody? Is temperature okay in here? You all feel alert? Okay? It's not too hot? No, I'm asking, is it? You're all okay? Okay. The process of worshiping the deity of the Lord in the temple is called Archana. What is the ultimate goal? And what is the definition of Archana? What is the goal of Archana? What? Yeah, to develop love for Krishna. And the process of Archana helps the conditioned soul to engage in serving the Lord's form, which can be perceived, Archa Vigraha, in our conditioned material existence. The idea is that Archa is a special mercy form of the Lord, that because with my present eyes I can't see spiritual, I can't even see any of you actually, I'm looking at your bodies. And when someone leaves their body, everyone said he's gone, but you never even see him go. And we can't see the spirit with our eyes, and we can't see Krishna with our present eyes. So he very kindly appears in the Archa form, and a form made out of metal, wood, paint, jewels, image within the mind, earth. These are mentioned by Krishna in his teaching to Uddhava, the various forms that he can assume. And the difference between Panchratrik Vidhi and the Bhagavat Marg, would someone like to say? Someone besides Srivas Pandit Prabhu.
My understanding is Pancharatrika Vidhi is like a regulated set of rules that a devotee has to follow. And Bhagavat Marg is when you do it in the sense of, very advanced devotee probably do this. I don't know if I'm saying it right, Prabhu. I'm just
Okay,
thinking.
let's get some. Anybody else want to say? Yes.
Bhagavad Marg is chanting, reading Shastras, Bhagavatam specifically, and Pancharatik Marg is deity worship.
Okay. Srivas, you want to say anything more about that? The Panchratrik, Prabhupada explains, comes from, most of what we have comes from Narada Muni. There are these, actually it's kind of a direct service to the Lord, and the process for doing so is revealed by Krishna himself. I told the story recently, but it's just the Panchratrik means 5 nights. So the history says that there's a way in which Madhu and Kaitaba, 2 demons, stole the Vedas from Brahma. Brahma had them in his mind, and when he was sleeping, they took them. And not only did the Lord kill those demons in the form of Hayagriva, but then he also spoke the essence of the Vedas in 5 nights. So Brahma said, I don't know how much time I have, you give me the essence. So in 5 nights, Pancharatra, he gave this essential form. And it includes these mantras and the ways in which of directly approaching the Lord and worshiping an Archa form. You want to say anything else? Okay, so Bhagavat Marg is the spontaneous path of devotional service. We're following that, but we may not have a taste for it. So when we do Panchratrik Vidhi, follow the rules and regulations of devotional service, and we do the Bhagavat Marg at the same time, chanting Hare Krishna and doing the deity worship at the same time will instill in us a taste for both, actually. Our senses will become purified by the Panchatraik Vidhi. And we'll stay in the mode of goodness, and then we can continue to chant Hare Krishna without offense. Otherwise, if we chant offensively, then we can go for many, many lifetimes and not come to the end of the chanting, the end goal of the chanting. So our acharyas have recommended we do these two things simultaneously, Panchatraik Vidhi and Bhagavat Marg. Okay, so just as a sample, it is Srimad Bhagavatam, this is quote Jiva Goswami, it is Srimad Bhagavatam's opinion that the process of deity worship is not actually necessary, just as the specific prescriptions of the Pancharatra and other scriptures do not have to be followed. The Bhagavatam enjoins that even without practicing deity worship, one can achieve the complete success of human life. By any of the other devotional processes, simply offering oneself at the Lord's feet for his protection, nonetheless, Vaishnavas following the path of Sri Narada and his ancestors endeavor to establish a personal relationship with the Lord by receiving the grace of a bona fide spiritual master through initiation. And in this tradition, the devotees are obliged at the time of initiation to begin engaging in deity worship. Although deity worship is not essential, the material conditioning of most candidates for devotional service requires that they engage in this activity. When we consider their bodily and mental conditions, we find that the character of such candidates is impure and their minds are agitated. Therefore, to rectify this material conditioning, the great sage Narada and others have at different times recommended various kinds of regulations for deity worship. Prabhupada, the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is so powerful that it does not depend on official initiation. But if one is initiated and engages in Panchatraik Vidhi, deity worship, his Krishna consciousness will awaken very soon, and his identification with the material world will be vanquished. The more one is freed from the material identification, the more one can realize that the spirit soul is qualitatively as good as the Supreme Lord. Do you find any of those quotations helpful? Yes, Vaisesika, I find them very helpful. Number 3, what is the meaning and importance of Diksha? It's as I gave from the Bhakti Sandarbha, it's the process by which one can awaken transcendental knowledge and vanquish reactions caused by sinful activities. Yes?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I had a question about a second initiation. So I want to ask first, is in Kali Yuga Harinam initiation enough? If we are sincerely following that to go back to Godhead?
Yes, it is enough. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, and so does the Shastra. Just by chanting one time Hare Krishna purely, it's enough. But as is mentioned over and over again, the age is so contaminated that people don't chant purely. They chant with all kinds of coverings and offenses and so forth. And even if one is that rare person who's ready, who's born into a situation, who is actually pure, such a person will observe the other regulations, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, to show the example of how others should do it. They won't simply, in very rare cases, maybe somebody's an avaduta or something like that. Yeah?
Thank you, Prabhu. And also I had the question that anybody and everybody can take the second initiation, or it's like not only those who have a particular ordained services in that manner should be taking second initiation?
Well, this, if the question is like, you can only take second initiation if you intend to worship the deity, is that what you're asking? If that's like your service that you're going to do, worship the deity. Some people in ISKCON say that. They say, only you should take initiation, but I didn't see Prabhupada checking on that so much. Are you going to do deity worship? He gave second initiation to book distributors and everybody else. But the emphasis is there that one should do some deity worship. And it's not that you have to become a full-time pujari, but you should cook for the Lord, you should do some, you should do some worship for the Lord. So it's implicit that there is some kind of, that you will go on to worship the deity, because part of the point of this whole thing is that you should have that connection in order to remain pure and stay in that orbit. But it's not an absolute necessity, as far as I'm concerned, that someone says, I want to be a pujari, therefore you take second initiation or something like that. Or that, you have to say that first. Does that help? Srivas Pandit, you had a comment to add to that? Because Ramananda Saka has come out of the booth, which means something heavy is coming up. Okay.
So strictly speaking, in the previous ages, you couldn't even read the Vedas if you didn't have the second initiation, which means that we read Isopanishad, so strictly speaking, can't read it even without having a second initiation. So in that sense, it's just not needed for the deity worship, but even for reading of Shastras, that purity is needed. So just to add to your comment.
Yeah. Bible somewhere says, don't cast pearls before the swine. And there's a sense of, don't profane something by giving it to somebody who can't appreciate it. Somebody should be refined enough to be able to actually enter into that.
Is a prerequisite to so many things.
You got to start over because everyone can't hear you.
So the point is that second initiation is a prerequisite to so many things, not just the deity worship in a strict sense. So
yes, thank you. That helps. Okay, Ramananda Saka Prabhu.
I have two questions. One is that in one of your classes you mentioned that if a Vaishnava comes in during the process of deity worship, if when one is doing the deity worship, he can temporarily put the deity worship on hold to receive the Vaishnava, and then can continue the deity worship. Does that apply to home worship only, or for the temple worship also?
It can apply to temple worship. One should use it with great discretion. It's if a Vaishnava, a very important Vaishnava comes, for instance, if some dignitary, an acharya, a guru, somebody comes in and there's nobody else to greet him and take care of him or her, then you should, if you have this thing, so nobody's taking care of them, nobody's greeting them, you can stop the deity worship, come out, take care of the Vaishnava, and then go back. And yes, even in the temple worship, that can be there. Because if you're worshiping the deity and you neglect the Vaishnava, then it's an offense. And that, again, it requires some discretion. And it doesn't mean that, anybody who comes in, you stop the deity worship, but it should be used in, special cases.
Okay. The second question I have is, generally, whenever we hear the term deity worship, immediately the mind jumps into the idea that it means doing performing arati, offering bhoga, things like that. Something we do in the deity room. But there are many other things also that we do in the temple. For example, cooking for the deity, cleaning the temple, and shopping outside for the deity. So everything is considered as a deity worship, right? Everything is included in the deity worship. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
There are 5 different aspects which are actually contained within the process of deity worship. And yes, shopping would be one of them. It means collecting the items that are going to be used in the worship, right?
Okay. But then, because some of these things can be done by anyone, like they don't need to take even Brahmin initiation or even initiated at all. And for example, doing the cleaning. And then, why do we emphasize that if one takes Brahmin initiation, he or she should be engaged in deity worship when that person is already doing that even before initiation?
There's a different standard. When you come closer to the Lord, there's more expected of you. You should be more refined. Your habits should be impeccable, and so forth, because you're touching the body of the Lord, and it's important. So there are certain things that one can do outside that support the deity worship that may not require that yet. Like anybody can sweep the floor, but we consider it a kind of deity worship because the whole temple itself is the deity. And just the awareness that I'm coming to a temple, I'm ringing the bell, I'm offering obeisances, I'm not sitting with my back to the deity and things like that. This is also contained within the archan process because the archan is going on and we're participating by coming to see the deity and so forth. But, there are different standards because of one's proximity to the Lord. There'll be more responsibility for those who come close. It's common sense, that when you get closer to the deity, that there's perfect, more perfect, most perfect. There are varieties even within the absolute, as we know. Does that help? Okay. So, there's many points from Shastra about even though one's born in a Brahmin family, one cannot engage in Vedic rituals without being initiated and having a sacred thread. Although born in a Brahmin family, one becomes a Brahmana only after initiation in the sacred thread ceremony. Unless one is initiated as a Brahmin, one cannot worship the holy name properly. That's from the Bhakti Sandarbha. Unless one is initiated by a bona fide spiritual master, all his devotional activities are useless. A person who is not properly initiated can descend again into the animal species. That's from the Hari Bhakti Vilas. It is a duty of every human being to surrender to a bona fide spiritual master, giving him everything, body, mind, and intelligence. One must take Vaishnava initiation from, again, Hari Bhakti Vilas is emphasizing initiation. Then, Vidhi Marg is the path of devotional service by following prescribed rules and regulations. Rag Marg is the path of spontaneous devotional service. For conditioned souls in the beginning, the conditioned souls need to engage in regulated devotional service until they get a taste. So Panchanga Puja, the 5 different parts of devotional service. Here's something that will give you something to think about. So the Panchanga Puja process of various processes in worshiping the deity. 5 parts. And there's an acronym that I made up. AUYIS. All you yield is sweet. Panchanga is the actual process, or various official processes and steps involved while performing deity worship. There are 5 parts, Panchanga, easily remembered by all you yield is sweet. And you is spelled like you would an abbreviation in a text message. Just a U. All you yield is sweet. So what is it? And what are the letters? Okay. So the first one is called Abhigamana. And this has to do with a process of everything you do from the time you wake up. And this is actually really nice because the Shastra gives all these ways that overcome bad dreams, to reboot the software because you're not the same person you were last night. You wake up and there's so many things. That's the nature of the material world. It's constant until the finish line. You got to keep doing these things. But it's very nice. There are all kinds of prayers you can do when you wake up in the morning, standard prayers, and I've listed some of them here that are on the website, Fan the Spark. You can download it. But saying your spiritual master's pranam mantra, then you can also, there's a mantra, O Vishnu, O Ishan, O Hrishikesh, you have awakened me, and now I'm ready to do whatever you wish today. From the Vishnu Dharmotara. I quoted in the Hari Bhakti Vilas. These are samples of prayers that you can say when you wake up. And then also a prayer to Mother Earth before you step out of bed. And so, O Mother Earth, I offer my humble obeisances unto you, who are the wife of Lord Vishnu and the residents of all the oceans, and who are decorated with mountains. Please forgive me for stepping on your surface. And then you put your right foot down first, very consciously, stepping onto the earth. And then there's this beautiful verse, Jayati Jananivaso Devaki Janmavado, which you can learn, which describes this very personal description of Lord Krishna, his relationships, his smiling face, and so forth. Yeah.
Do we have all these mantras and the details in Fanda Spark?
Yeah, you can download this document that I'm holding in my hand. Try to put it up there this morning. And so, a few mantras like that. As I said, you can get a whole book of mantras this thick. And saying with, get out of bed, There's a lot of mantras. You can go mantra crazy. But it is a very sweet process to pick a few and get in a regulation of doing it, because then when you wake up, it's not just like rolling out of bed and turning on CNN. See who just got killed. You start very consciously, and this is a part of the Panchatraik Vidhi. You boot up in the right way every morning. Start, and then the Shastra, the Hari Bhakti Vilas, which was ordered by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Sanatana Goswami, talks about bathing and dressing. And, there's protocol for that, bathing and dressing, how you, the personal hygiene, how you take care of your body. You should get in a routine, that you get up and you do in a certain way to take care of your body. And there's some details you can read. I'm not going to go into them right now. Also, it includes the purification of the body besides, evacuation and taking bath. Then also one should do Achman. Achman's very nice. If you have it set up, like any Brahmin Vaishnav, you'll notice when they travel, when they set down all their things in a new place, they set a little corner of the room where they're going to do their achmana and put on their tilak. And you should have a little bag where you carry a little ball of tilak, and you have a mirror, a little tiny mirror, and then you have an achman cup and maybe a little water pot. It can be small, simple, simplify it, but then keep it in a little bag, and when you go somewhere, set it up. And that way you take your bath and you come and you sit down, you do your achmana, and then you put on your tilak. And these should feel like automatic. In fact, it's mentioned that sometimes students from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's classes, they would come, and if someone came without tilak, he would embarrass them in front of everyone. Say, you didn't do your puja today, go home, put on your tilak. So the next time he would always put on his tilak before he would come to the program. So there's this, Mahaprabhu emphasized these things, the Shastra emphasizes them, it's very nice, placing the mantras on one's body. This is a nyas. Yes? Manjula Kanta Devi Dasi. So this Devi at the end of Manjula Kanta, someone might say, or there are a couple questions came up. It's the name of Krishna, so how can you call it Devi? But Devi is an adjective of Dasi. It's not modifying, the name of Krishna and saying Krishna is a Devi, but it's modifying the Dasi. Okay.
Maharaj, it just came to my mind as you were explaining all these processes and procedures. I have asked you this question before, that sometimes we come straight from the office or from our work, and we come in and then we wash up, we put a tilak, and we come and sit down in the class. We are not at the level where Sanatana Goswami was. We slip step by step by step, and it is going to get worse as Kali progresses. Our degradation progresses too. I want to remember what you said. How is it that though we are lower and lower on the steps of the ladder, how is it that we can get all the way up there? What is that thing that gives us hope?
Oh, the holy name. If you chant every day the holy name with attention, then Krishna will lift you up. And we see it over and over again. Those who take a steady approach to this, they'll start with 2 rounds, then 4 rounds, and then Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavatiya kinchana sarvar gunas tatra samasate sura harava bhaktasya kuto mahadguna manoratena sati davato bihi. 5.18.12, the overture of 5.18.12. From the Bhagavatam says that by worshiping Krishna, then natural good qualities come out. So much so that the devas will want to live with you. They'll think, "I'll go stay with these people." That's what that's the acharyas say the verse means. Become so purified by that process. So yes, we depend on the holy name for all the deity worship and everything else. We start with chanting Hare Krishna, we end with chanting Hare Krishna. This is very clear in Jiva Goswami's teaching, Hari Bhakti Vilas also, and that we're depending on the holy name for everything. And so how we also do this deity worship, which keeps us connected to the personal form of Krishna and in a pure state of mind, so we can go on chanting Hare Krishna. By Krishna's mercy only, we'll advance. That's the saving grace in Kali Yuga. Harinama, Harinama, Harinama eva kevalam, Kalavanasteva, Nasteva, Nasteva, Gatiranyata, Kalirdosha nidhe rajan, Asteheko mahan gunan, Kirtana deva Krishnasya mukta sangha param vraje. It's one good quality, everything else is a mess. Srivas Prabhu, you had a point? Okay. Okay, Shri Kumar, quick point, because I want to make it sure we get through the Panchanga.
Just a quick question, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
This one confuses me. When we have this Nirjala Ekadasi or Janmashtami, so when we do Achaman, can we do Achaman? I mean, are we supposed to do?
When you do Nirjal, well, it's not really like you're gulping water. It's just a little sip. It's a little sip. Personally, when I'm fasting, I don't take Charanamrit. I just like to stay contained, until and then break afterwards. But no, you have to say Achman when you're performing the Nirjala Ekadashi and you're doing your pujas and stuff like that. You just don't have to drink a whole gallon or anything. Yeah.
Quickly want to check, so you mentioned we are doing Pancharatrik because it is supporting holy name, and again now it's like we can perfect our Pancharatrik by chanting holy names. So it's like both are interrelated.
Yes, they're interrelated. Yes. Okay, so in the Panchanga, I was mentioning that these 5 processes. So the first one is Abhigamana, which is waking up, chanting specific prayers, cleaning the mouth, taking bath, etc. And those you can look at carefully and get yourself into a regimen, how you keep clean at these various things. And the next one in the AUYIS, all you yield is sweet, is Upadan, which means gathering the articles for worship. And this means that there are certain things you need to worship the deity. Even if you're doing very simple worship, you should have everything clean and nice. Dedicated paraphernalia that's for the deity, that you use for that. If you eat out of something, you shouldn't use it for the deity and things like that. They should have their own separate section in your house, cupboard, not house, wing, but separate section for the paraphernalia for the Lord. And gathering together all these things means, when you go to Vrindavan or anywhere else, you might need some little things for your deity or for the deity in the temple. And this is a preoccupation. Some people, that's what they do full time, is they acquire the paraphernalia for the deity. And this is a part of the deity worship, going shopping for the Lord, picking out a new flute, getting the clothes made. There's great lengths that devotees go to have the clothes designed for the Lord and so forth. Some people make the clothes. And then there's gathering flowers every day. Going out to get flowers for the Lord is very nice. My neighbors see me every day coming out in the morning with my dhoti on, picking flowers in the front of the yard. I don't see anybody else doing that on my block. They just let the flowers they just look at them, and nowadays they make these gardens that don't have flowers so much because it's hard to take care of. But part of our whole, it's really ecstatic going out and collecting flowers and tulsi every day and getting it all together as much as you can according to the season, and any other seasonable fruits you can also, and vegetables, you can bring them out. This is all part of this collection process called upadan, getting the paraphernalia together. Frankly, it takes much longer to do all this than it does to actually perform the puja. It's setting up, it's putting everything together, and of course you get regimented and you know where everything is, and it becomes sort of an automatic unfolding process. But this is very nice because it brings you back every day, if you're doing this process, even if it's simple, to, oh right, I'm a devotee. And because the mind wants to go on to some profit in the material world, but if you come back to this very simple level, it's like, oh, look at all these little cups. What are these for? And they're for the pleasure of the Lord's senses. And in the material world, it's like everyone wants for their own senses. Like, am I making progress? Am I making money here? It's like, why should I do this? When you're collecting all these little, making all these little nice things for the Lord, like ghee wicks. I mean, where do you ever see ghee lamps and things like that, and fans and all? These are for Krishna. They're very rare things. You had a question? Okay. So upadan is number 2. And then we come to comes yoga. Yoga means the Bhuta Shuddhi prayer, prayers for sankalpa, etc., before starting the actual worship. So you clean yourself, you go collect everything, you put it together to get ready for the deity worship. And then before you start, it's part of the process of deity worship to clean one's subtle body, Bhuta Shuddhi. So there are prayers you do that with. Like I mentioned, Naham Vipro Nacha Narapatir Napi Vaishuna Shudro, and there's prayers for invoking auspiciousness as well. Swasino Govinda, Swasino Chutananto, Swasino Vasudevo, Vayana Tayana Hari. There's a collection of mantras, and you should have, some of those mantras ready. So you sit down, you purify your subtle body by remembering who you are. And in some of the padhatis, they have, pranayam. This is bona fide process. You do some pranayam. There are these nyasas where you're throwing astras every direction. You can throw, rice with turmeric around the room and all kinds of things like that. It's very nice, actually, if you try this process. You'll see a lot of different things, what you can accommodate. But this is all part of the process of yoga before you start worshiping the Lord. Then ija is the worship of the Lord directly. 64 articles of worship, and you'll notice that there in the chart, and the Panchratra Pradeep shows that there are various sets of these articles that you can offer. If you can't offer all 64 items to the Lord, beginning with a seat, and then offering him a water to wash his feet, water to wash his hands, mouthwash, then madhuparka, and then an oil massage, and then bathe him in scented water, or panchagavya, panchamrit, and then there's offering tilak, offering a Brahman's thread, there's offering jewels, ornaments. It goes on to 64 items, actually, including naivedya, offering some bhoga at the end. All these things are part of the ija, and they're very nice. You get into the whatever items you're offering to the Lord every day, and it's a personal relationship. Sometimes you're holding a little spoon to the Lord's mouth, and then you see his face. He's got a smiling face and beautiful lips, and you offer him this and that and this and that and this and that, and then there's a feeling like I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. Where else should I go except right here? And when you start getting that feeling when you're worshiping the Lord with all these items, this is a kind of samadhi. It's a kind of meditation that you won't get anywhere else. And if you go out in the forest and try to sit down and think, you'll go like, God, I have an appointment. But if you sit down, you already have an appointment with the Lord every day, and you sit down and you do this worship and you go through it. There's actually satisfaction. You actually get freed from all your other obligations. No one can bug you. Because like, look, he's got all this stuff. He's doing something. Even if they don't know what it is, they'll leave you alone because it's pretty impressive, offering these things to the Lord. So this is Ija, which is the worship of the Lord, and then comes Swadhyaya, which means the cultivation of knowledge of devotional service. So this studying that we do, reading for the Lord, memorizing verses and things like this is also part of the deity worship, and it all becomes connected together with that. So one can develop skills in doing all these things in the Archana process. We talked today about how there are these padditis that give all the information about how to worship the Lord. We've had many of them. There's a standard process within the temple that you can learn from talking to the devotees and getting trained up. And one should endeavor for this to make advancement in devotional service. One should learn the Shastra through Bhakti Shastra and then take one's second initiation. One should commit oneself to some kind of regular worship of the Lord, and in that way have very strong foundation in devotional life to move forward. Now we're out of time. So this is just an introductory, but to bring our attention to these processes of the process of deity worship, which is very nice, and it is an essential part, as I mentioned at the very beginning, out of the 5 items that are most important, deity worship is one. Vancha kalpatarubhascha kripasannabheva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Nachariyar marman, nachariyar marman, nachariyar marman, nachariyar marman, hey, nachariyar marman, nachariyar marman, nachariyar marman, nachariyar marman.